Hello everybody, welcome to your Taco Tuesday Devo. My name is Shalom and I will start by reading Colossians chapter 1 verses 15 through 23. Starting at verse 15. The Son is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. For in him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities. All things have been created through him and for him. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together. And he is the head of the body, the church, and he is the beginning and the firstborn from among the dead, so that in everything he might have supremacy. For God was pleased to have all his fullness dwell in him, and through him to reconcile to himself all things, whether things on earth or things in heaven, by making peace through his blood shed on the cross. Once you were alienated from God and are enemies in your minds because of your evil behavior. But now he has reconciled you by Christ's physical body through death to present you holy in his sight, without blemish and free from accusation, if you continue in your faith, established and firm, and do not move from the hope held out in the gospel. This is the gospel that you have heard and that has been proclaimed to every creature under heaven, and of which I, Paul, have become a servant. So that was just Colossians chapter 1, verses 15 through 23. Before we discuss what this passage was about, let us first note a couple of facts. Colossians was written by Paul and his companion Timothy around 60 AD. They were writing to the church of Colossae. Now that we know this, we can move on to the meaning of the passage. In this letter, Paul starts by informing the church of God's ultimate supremacy in the verses 15 through 18. We see words like firstborn, head of the church and the body, and supreme. God loved us so much that he chose to reconcile us to himself by making peace through his blood. From all of this, we can take away that God is supreme and powerful, and that he chose to reconcile us to himself. Through this, we were then presented as holy in his sight, without blemish and free of accusation. That's in verse 22. Paul then gives a command to the church of Colossae to continue in their faith, established and firm, and to keep them focused on what was first taught to them. The main idea of this passage is that God and Christ are the same, both supreme over all things, and chose to reconcile us to himself. We are commanded to remain in our faith and not to move from the hope that we have in the gospel. But how does this all apply to us now? This passage applies to us individually and corporately. Individually, we are all called to be disciples of the Lord, have built our lives, trust, and faith in Jesus. Paul commands us to remain established and firm in our faith, but also encourages us to go on proclaiming the Lord's name everywhere. Proclamation of Jesus' name can be verbal, but our actions speak volumes too. Speak and act with love, with the love and life of Jesus Christ into everyone you see. Corporately, Paul's message to the church is to also remain firm in their faith that we have in Jesus, and to be spreading God's love everywhere. To sum it all up, my challenge for you guys this week is to remain firm in your faith by spending time with God every day, and to find a way that you can share God's love by doing a random act of kindness for someone else. Thanks, guys. I hope you have a wonderful week.